The night the trust I built with years of careful calculations cracked, I learned that revenge wears a tailored suit, and I wore it with the quiet pride of someone who had learned to count every heartbeat before it escaped into the world. I am Helena Montez, 35, a senior bank executive who moves through glass and steel the way a swimmer moves through water, with a measured grace that hides a storm just beneath the surface. And I carry a hidden ambition like a compass needle always pointing toward a brighter, colder horizon. I want to build a private engine inside the bank, a lean arm that can move money, risk, and influence without the old gatekeepers slowing me with their whispers and their assumptions. A place where decisions slide from mind to ledger with the speed of a rumor turning into fact. The personal event that frames this episode came dressed as a party. A polished room full of clinking glasses and soft laughter that meant nothing and everything at once. And there, I learned that the man I trusted most had slept with my closest confidant, the friend who had stood beside me when the numbers turned against me and the numbers turned back. A betrayal that burned through me like cold brass and left a hollow in my chest that echoed every time I breathed in, air that tasted even slightly like champagne. I stood there with the ache in my throat and the math in my head, and I counted the ways this could ruin me. But I also saw the outline of a clever shield, a way to use this hurt to seed a storm the two of them could not weather, a way to convert the harm into a map that would lead me to the top floor where the real power slept behind velvet ropes and guarded doors. The first day after the revelation, I was back at my desk with the same routine and two new rules in my head: never show the edge and never forget the game. The man who had broken my trust came to me with a face that looked both contrite and careless, as if he believed apologies were just another tactic to win what he had already taken. He spoke of a cross-department project, a routine merger risk review that would require someone with polished charm and a steel spine. Someone who could pretend to be a miracle worker while the numbers did the talking. I invited him to apply, watched his eagerness bloom, and leaned into a plan that would let me place him exactly where I could watch him, chest high against the current of a river that could pull him under in an instant if I did not steer the boats with care. He walked into my orbit as a veteran of excuses, and I walked him into a room where every whisper could be measured, every rumor traced, and every mistake amplified into a learning for the entire team. I did not tell him I was using him, not then, but I did tell him that I would not tolerate flinching when the stakes rose, and I watched him nod as if that warning came from a trusted mentor instead of a former lover who knew his own soul was made of easier lies than hard truth. As weeks went by, the project grew heavy with the gravity of risk and opportunity, and I watched him work with an eagerness that bordered on self-destruction, the kind of hunger that thrives on praise and ends up devouring the praise giver as well. He learned to present the numbers with a confidence I had learned long ago, to frame danger as a favorable forecast, to dress fear in a suit and call it a strategy, and I let him climb while I kept a quiet ledger of the costs the ascent would demand. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I did not flinch, because every move was a wound I counted, and every wound was a step toward a justice I intended to serve cold. The city wore a fog that winter, and I wore a coat of patience, a shield of rules, and the exact kind of resolve that makes a person invisible until she is ready to strike. If you love Helena's journey, like and subscribe to join her next chapter. I will not pretend the thrill did not rise in me when the first warning bells rang, not from the outside, but from within. A small tremor that told me I had not only found a weakness in the plan, but a way to turn that weakness into a weapon that could cut through the trust they had counted on to keep me quiet. The board loved the early results, the city loved the headlines, and I loved the quiet punctuation at the end of a long day when the room lights softened and the glass on the windows turned the skyline into a jagged reflection of a woman who had learned to listen to the quiet voice that tells the truth even when it hurts. Then came the moment of truth, not in a dramatic confession, but in the tally of consequences. In the way the numbers began to tilt toward a verdict I could live with, but my betrayers could not. The ex-lover, the man who had brought the chaos into my life with that single kiss of a forbidden night, found himself boxed into my plan with the rest of the team, a player who thought timing and charm could outrun consequence, who believed a few clever words could erase the past. I did not need him to pretend to be a martyr. I needed him to perform, and perform he did, until the room smelled of dry ink and old fear, until the auditors walked in with too suited silence and a hush that could swallow a room, until the very idea of his freedom became the thing that would haunt him the most. He stood before the committee with a hopeful smile that did not reach his eyes. And I watched as the story unfolded the way a well-woven fabric unravels when a careful seam is pulled too hard. The proof was not merely in words, but in the quiet, unglamorous facts I stacked like bricks, file after file, ledger after ledger, each one a cold reminder that trust is not a currency one can spend without earning it back, not a debt that vanishes when the lights go on and the cameras blink away the drama. The moment of reckoning arrived not with a bang, but with a reveal so precise that the room fell into a hush thick as velvet. There was no loud apology and no grand gesture, only the slow, undeniable truth that his reputation would be measured not by the charm of his stories, but by the outcomes he could deliver or ruin. And the most important outcome was still mine to command, because I had learned to translate a broken trust into a rebuilt empire. He learned, as did the confidant who once stood by him, that the road to forgiveness is paved by the people you have harmed becoming better because of your missteps, or being made to disappear from the stage when their missteps threaten the whole production. My strategy did not end with his fall, though the fall was magnificent in its cold, precise calculus. A redesigned risk framework, a set of controls that turned casual deciders into accountable guardians of the balance sheet. A language of numbers so clean that it could not be argued with. A system that rewarded prudence and punished the kind of reckless optimism that had once drawn them to my betrayer's charm. The bank did not crave drama. It craved certainty, and I offered them certainty wrapped in a plan that used pain to heal the ledger and fear to sharpen the mind. In the quiet aftermath, I found another truth pressed into my skin like a brand, that revenge can give you power, and power can demand a toll you did not foresee, that the person you are when you win might not be the person you wanted to become when the costs of victory begin to accumulate in your bones. And yet, there was also a strange clarity in the clarity of purpose, a sense that to hold a line and keep it straight, one must sometimes cut away everything that does not belong to the future you are building. The final chapter arrived on a Tuesday when the newsroom screens flickered with numbers, and the board minutes carried a tone of hard-earned respect. And I felt the last soft edge of fear melt away, replaced by a clean, almost industrial calm that comes from knowing where every piece sits on the board, and how every piece will move tomorrow if you tilt your head and listen to the quiet rhythm of the market. They could not claim I had betrayed a friend because I did not betray myself. I used the truth to shield the Enterprise and to steady the people who needed steadiness most. And in that moment, I realized the price of justice served cold had a benefit